into it.
Take 3.
Take 3. 3 for us, 1 for you. That's how it goes. With my wife today.
Hello.
She's had to say hello so many times. She gets to see the behind the scenes.
I almost forgot.
This is not date night news today, but I wanted to have my wife with me because I like talking to somebody. I really do. I need more people on the podcast, more guests maybe. Not sure, but this is the Soul Not for Sale podcast. I'm not gonna call it that. Just call it Soul Not for Sale. You guys know. You guys know the shirt. We're talking with Tucker Carlson today and Mattias Desmet. He's going to be talking about totalitarianism and the conditions that have to happen to people in order for totalitarianism to take place. And the connection that I've made is these conditions lead to a myriad of things that we've seen happen in society. It's not just the past 3 years. There's a lot of things that have been ongoing that have been because of these conditions. So I just wanted to get into that, and then I just wanted your opinion a little bit. Not too much, you know. I know you don't have your notes or anything, but yeah, I just wanted to do this. And a quick message to the guy who said that he didn't want to see me talk about clothing anymore. Well, that's not happening. Here is the store, as always, the newest design, the Great Resist. Thank you to my wife for getting this up for me. Thank you so much, honey. And we got the hoodies and the shirts here. We got white, we got black, and we have all sizes up until like what, triple X?
I think triple X.
Quadruple X or something like that. And of course, you know, we got the Soul Not for Sale stuff. Bang, every single thing you could think of.
Yeah,
Kid
we like
sizes.
our mugs.
Yeah. I should have made you bring them up. We got the tank tops, the mugs, women's V-necks, t-shirts, hoodies, everything. And as you know, every purchase helps us tremendously and makes my wife extremely happy.
It does. It's true.
Happy wife, happy life. But yeah, let's get into the clip and then we're going to talk about it. Cool? All right, let's do it.
Have you seen this clip?
I have watched this clip like 10 times.
Oh, first time.
That's how this works with me. Let's get into it.
Emerges under very specific conditions. So like the first and the most important condition is always that many people have to feel disconnected from their natural and social environment. And that was definitely the case just before the corona crisis started. The number of lonely people peaked. Up to 40% of the population worldwide reported not to have one meaningful relationship and to only connect to other people through the internet. And from this follows the second condition. If people feel disconnected from their natural and social environment, they will typically start to struggle with lack of meaning making. To give an example from the situation just before the corona crisis, 60% of the people worldwide reported that they considered their job to be a so-called bullshit job. That means a job without purpose or meaning. And in this state, if people feel socially disconnected and they feel a lack of meaning making, they will typically start to suffer from something very specific at the affective level. They will be confronted with so-called free-floating anxiety, frustration, and aggression. That means a kind of anxiety, frustration, and aggression that is not coupled to a mental representation, a kind of anxiety, frustration, and aggression in which people don't know what they feel anxious, frustrated, and aggressive for. And that state is extremely aversive. If you feel anxious and you don't know what you feel anxious for, you have the feeling that you cannot control your anxiety. If you feel frustrated and aggressive, and you don't know what you feel frustrated and aggressive for, you cannot take it out to someone, and all the frustration and aggression piles up in your psychological system and leads to a certain very aversive tension. And in this state, if the population is in this state, something very specific might happen. If under these conditions, a narrative is distributed through the mass media, indicating an object of anxiety, and at the same time, providing a strategy to deal with that object of anxiety, for instance, the lockdowns to deal with the virus, concentration camps to deal with the Jews, witch hunts to deal with the witches, and so on. If under these conditions, a narrative is distributed, disseminated through the mass media, indicating this object of anxiety and a strategy to deal with it, then there might be a huge willingness to participate in a strategy to deal with the object of anxiety, no matter how absurd this narrative is, simply because in this way people feel that they can control their anxiety. They feel that they have something to direct their frustration and aggression on. So that's the first extremely important step. And then follows the second one, which is the really dangerous step. Because so many people participate at the same time in the strategy to deal with the object of anxiety, they feel connected again. It is as if their loneliness disappears. They feel full of solidarity. And that's the point. They have the feeling that they fight this collective, heroic battle with a virus, and they will consider everyone who doesn't go along with them as an egoist, as someone who lacks all solidarity. And that, in itself, the strange thing is, you could say, well, what's the problem? People felt lonely, and now they feel connected again. So what's the problem? But there is a problem. Because in a mass is a group that is formed not because people connect to each other. A mass is a group that is formed because each individual separately connects to the collective. Meaning that the famous solidarity of the masses is never a solidarity with other individuals.
Right.
It's a solidarity with the collective. And the longer the mass formation exists, the more everyone demands that everyone sacrifices all his personal interests for the collective. And that's exactly the reason why, in the corona crisis, for instance, everyone was talking about solidarity. And at the same time, we accepted that if someone got an accident on the street, we were no longer allowed to help him. At the same time, we accepted that if our father or mother our parents were dying somewhere in a nursing home, that we were no longer allowed to visit them. So it was everyone had to sacrifice everything for the sake of the collective. So mass formation is extreme collectivism. It's extreme collectivism. It's the balance between individualism and collectivism that goes completely in a direction.
But there's no actual, but at the same time, the people who encourage it discourage the formation of individual relationships between people.
Always.
So the government in this country, the Biden administration, was encouraging children to turn in their parents to law enforcement if they said something that deviated from the corona narrative online.
Yeah.
So they're breaking apart solidarity between people.
Of course.
Of course, there's always a feature of it.
The strange thing is that this happens spontaneously. In every group which has an extremely strong group identity, all the energy will be sucked away from the bonds between the individuals. For instance, in a military commando, if they have to do something dangerous, they will typically demand that there are no sexual relationships between the members of the group.
Right.
Simply because this relationship between the members, this strong relationship, could threaten the group in a dangerous situation.
Right.
These members could choose for each other instead of for the group. So that happens in every group with a very strong group identity. Spontaneously and in a mass to an extreme extent. In a mass, all solidarity, all the love between the individuals is sucked away, and it's all injected in the love between the individual and the collective. And that's why, in the end, even the strongest bond, the bond between a mother and her child, completely impoverishes, and even mothers report their sons to the state and get them killed if they feel that they are not loyal enough to the state. So it's a natural. It's a psychological process that is very logical, but that is extremely dangerous. And that's exactly why we have to try to understand it, and we have to try to understand what we can do about it.
So that was the clip.
Wow.
This gentleman has a great breakdown of all this stuff. It's actually remarkable. And I have to say, that accent sounds more intelligent than the British accent.
Yeah, it does.
You know? For a long time, I've always thought British was a thing, but that was super intelligent.
British, I feel like, is a good accent for literature.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, like history even.
Yeah.
But for things that are sciencey.
Yeah.
This is way better.
Yeah. I want to say Russian. He sounds Russian, right?
Yeah, Slavic of some sort.
Yeah. So what we can do about it. See, that's the thing that stood out to me, because I was actually taking notes on this as I was listening to it. And when he goes over, and this is exactly what I teach people when I coach. And this is what I should say, even this is what I see when I coach people, disconnection and isolation. And also, just before I go on, this is actually why I actually wanted you on this one, because I'd have to thank you for this, because I don't know, and maybe you feel the same way, I don't know where I'd be throughout the pandemic if I didn't have you.
That's true.
I
don't know what I would do either.
Right? I'd be living in my mom's basement. I'd be really upset, about life and everything. I'd be completely disconnected. It would be terrible. So, disconnection, isolation, right? Lack of meaning and purpose. That, like, so the disconnection, isolation leads to lack of meaning and purpose, and then leads to anxiety, aggression, frustration, and then the narrative is injected. So it's like the disconnect, like we see this in society so much already, like beyond the past 3 years is what I've been finding, or what I see. We've been seeing all of this for a long time, and the connection that I make is towards things like the mass shootings that we see, because the kids that usually go through that kind of thing, they usually experience this exact same thing. They have no meaning, they're disconnected, they're isolated, they're mad, they're really angry at the world, and then they have this narrative that they're not good enough. Or you can think of like the regular guy, middle-aged guy, who is kind of like awake to things, and he has these same experiences, but the narrative injected to him is World War III's coming, there's constant threats, there's constant doom and gloom, you know? It's very, very interesting, because again, like I'm looking way past the past 3 years. It's like you could look today, you know, forget about what happened in the past, or don't forget, but you know what I mean? Like look into today and where we're seeing all this stuff right now, you know?
Yeah.
And then just see, yeah, it's very interesting, very, very interesting to think about. And then all you have to do is inject the narrative, you know? Really weird. And of course, I mean, the pandemic is the perfect example, but this happens all the time. I felt this way growing up, and I didn't need any kind of pandemic to be happening. I felt like this for years. All through my teenage years, I felt like this. I would work shitty jobs, and that made me feel like I had a lack of purpose, and I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And I worked night shift, as you know, and that would give disconnection and isolation.
And even like in your community that you grew up in.
True. Yeah.
Like you were isolated.
Yeah. I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish community.
Yeah. Like when people cross the street to not walk past you.
Yeah. Yeah. True. That's
it's going to mess you up mentally.
Yeah.
Because you're apart.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the other.
Yeah.
For like forever. Right. Until, you know, like obviously I had some friends, but like for the most part, it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Very weird thing.
But I thought about like what he was saying a lot in terms of not so much like on the victim's standpoint, but also on the aggressor. Like you were saying, like school shootings, if you think about the people who perpetrate school shootings, they're typically isolated, alone, don't have a lot of friends. And then he was talking about frustration and aggression. That comes out in a really negative way that affects a lot of people, and then might make them spiral into a very similar thing with a different expression. Yeah,
exactly. Like I said, like the narrative that's injected into those guys, those young guys, is that I'm not good enough, I'm not cool, I have no friends, like all of that stuff. Like I had that same thing growing up, and I just turned to drugs, you know, whereas like another kid, you know, and you know, you grow up and you have access to like a firearm. It's like I used to tell you funny stories about all the time when I was a kid, and my brother would beat me up. I'd like go get a knife, and then my other brother would be like, "Come here," because I'd be like 6, and he'd be like, "Get out of here!
No,
what are you
crazy.
doing?" Right? And it's just because I was mad, and like I don't even know what I would do. Obviously, I probably wouldn't do anything, but it's just funny to think about, or you know, kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what needs to happen, and why I talk about this so much, is that people need to connect to something. You know, like I was connected to you. I was also connected to a purpose and things that I wanted to do, the ambitions that I had. Like those things really kept me going. I think a lot of people in life right now, they need those things. They need purpose, they need meaning, they need connection. Whether it's a men's group, if you're a man, a woman's group, if you're a woman, you know, connecting on any kind of hobbies that you have, something. But people need this like community, which is why, like, again, I mean, we didn't go today, but why church is so important, or synagogue, or, you know, temple. What do Muslim people call their temples? Mosque, there you go. Or a mosque. Like that stuff is so important, you know, even if you're not like the most devout person, just showing up to a place like that all the time where everybody's kind of happy to see you and you guys all have the like-mindedness is just really good for you. You know, just really interesting. And I mean, and that's what, growing up, that's what I got. I would go to the corner and everybody was on drugs. And it was like, we'd all meet up and we'd laugh and have a great time. Even when I was doing stand-up comedy, you can see it in a lot of comics. A lot of them would be depressed and like without meaning, but like they would show up to every open mic and everything because they get to talk.
Yeah.
Like you were instantly friends. It's like, he's a comedian. What's up? How you doing? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like that. Yeah, I had a friend who he was on heroin. He got off heroin because of comedy.
Wow.
I remember seeing him at his worst, like coming out of washrooms. I'm like you didn't just do coke. You look different.
Oh.
Like, you look much different than you should.
Wow.
And then he got clean. Like, he got clean. Now he's like making a lot of money.
Good for him.
He's making like 10 grand a month.
Awesome.
Doing sales.
That's great.
Yeah, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all because like you just get that little friend group. You get that little connection that you need so badly.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
it's important.
Yeah, it's so important. I just noticed that when he was talking about it, because you could just sit back and have the mindset of like, oh yeah, what they did to us, and it was horrible and this and that. But it's like, you don't want to just wallow. I think that's just as bad sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, just wallowing in what happened. Like, you got to learn how to get past it, and also like what you can do to mitigate that feeling from happening. Because if there is some entity around you that's trying to disconnect you and trying to make you experience lack of purpose and anxiety and frustration via like social media would be the thing I point to the most, then you have to be the one to get your connection to something. Not isolate yourself, find your meaning, find your purpose, mitigate social media if that's where you're getting your anger from. Because like, I go through Twitter sometimes and I'm like, I'm pissed. This is weird. And then the most important thing is, if there is some entity trying to inject a narrative into you or around you, it's so important that you inject your own narrative.
Yeah. Like, recognize it and repeat your own values to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing. I always talk about that. Well, I mean, you've seen it. Like, I have my own core values written downstairs. Mm-hmm. You have yours, and it really does help. And it helps focus you a lot. So, and then reconnection to the goal, instead of connecting to the goal of collectivism, like that guy was talking about, Mattias, connect to a different goal, a goal in mind, an ideal that you have for yourself. Like, we're constantly talking about like what we want to do with our lives, where we want to be living, how we want things to be, how cute our kids will be. Like, you got to constantly be painting this really good image that you're working towards. Yep. Or else like what they are handing you is just terrible. Otherwise, So I just noticed that with this guy. It's really, really interesting interview. And again, I think this is the interview. I've said it to them, but I haven't said it to you. I think this is the interview that like broke Tucker Carlson's brain. Maybe. Because he was just like a regular, like, kind of brought up things, like went against the grain. Yeah. But like, after this,
basically mainstream news still.
Yeah. But after this, it was like he was bringing up the CIA and JFK and like, just weird, taking swipes at Big Pharma and like just going all out. Because one thing that this gentleman talks about, you didn't see in the first video that I made about this, he talks about how, and he actually talks about it again. I'm going to play another clip in another video. But he talks about how it's so important for people who can see all of this to speak up. And he likens it to, actually, perfect example here, because she falls asleep all the time. And, there'll be some times where you'll be like, why do you keep like, and I keep waking you up? Mm-hmm. Because if I let you sleep, it'll get deeper and deeper and deeper, and it'll get harder and harder to wake you up. And he actually likens that exact thing that people are going through. He's like, the reason you're supposed to speak up is because it kind of shakes people awake for a second. And like, they'll go back into the whole thing and feeding into this whole thing. But every time you speak up, it kind of like wakes them up. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you say nothing, if like if that percentage of people who can see all this say nothing, people will just go deeper and deeper and deeper into sleep. Yeah. Or into like whatever narrative is around. So it's like, it's really, really interesting the way he breaks it down.
Yeah. I do find like a lot of internet culture buys into kind of the collectivism, but also individualism issue.
Yeah.
Because people get like almost like a victim, like they've been wronged by people's opinions on the internet, regardless of what your opinion is.
Yeah.
Understand that everyone wants the best for themselves and for humanity.
Yeah.
There's nobody in the world who thinks what they're doing will negatively benefit the population.
Yeah. It's very true.
So I think people should remember that too, and that nobody is actively working to damage things. Well, 99.9% of the people aren't.
Well, I would even say like the people who like, you know, the they and all the theories that are out there of, you know, things that are being done to the 99%, even those people, even the Klauses and the Gates, they feel like they're doing something really good. They're like,
They do, yeah.
They're like, we have to cull these people.
Yeah.
You know, the same way you cull deer. It's like it's going to get out of control.
Yeah.
We're helping. You know, it's like it's a real thing.
And just remember, when you disagree with someone, you have every right to disagree with opinions, but come from a place of education instead of anger, because it goes so much farther.
Yeah, it's weird. My friend, this actually reminds me of my buddy, what he told me. I remember I was talking with Hank, and he was like, I was like learning about like the left and the right and like everything, and I'm like, and the one thing he said to me, he goes, what tends to happen on sides is like they shut each other down, and there's no education like you were bringing up. And he's like, we were talking about like the left. He was just like, he's like, sometimes the people on the left will be like, you know, I'm not even going to educate you because you're that stupid.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even going to take the time to teach you anything because you're that dumb. And I notice both sides do that.
Yeah.
It's like if you question anything, it's like, oh, well, you're just a moron.
And then
I'm
you're
gonna
just at a
write you off.
stalemate.
Yeah.
And then you like think that person is morally wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Evil.
Yeah.
Evil.
But they're
terrible.
not. Nobody's really evil.
Yeah, nobody is full. Everybody thinks that if they're pushing what they believe on you, that it's for your own good.
Yeah.
You know, like it's going to help you in the end.
Yeah.
Which is very odd.
It is odd.
It's very, very odd to feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's actually making me feel like I should have a debate with somebody. I've never met anybody who's like, I love the World Economic Forum. I've never met anybody like that, but if I do, I'd love to like talk to them and like have a back and forth and like understand like why it's good. 'Cause I was actually doing that with a friend of mine before we end. I was actually doing this with a friend of mine. We were talking about, we were just having a conversation about 15-minute cities. And he understands it from like a governmental like infrastructure perspective. And he was breaking down, he's like, why it's like a really good thing and why it like kind of in certain cities needs to happen. And it was interesting. I didn't agree, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to hear that side of it because I've never heard that side of it before. And but yeah, I was like, yeah, you're crazy. Like, you wait and see, buddy. I didn't say that though. But yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
this is
you.
what I want to start doing. I want to start doing this with guests. Start like watching something and then like breaking it down together. That's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, your back hurt?
No,
What's wrong?
nothing.
Lay back. You can lay back, honey.
Okay.
Lay on back. You're my wife. I wouldn't let a guest lay back. But you can lay back. All right, guys. That is it for today. Like the video. Like the video. Like the video. It helps so much. Please do. Other than that, I am out. Say bye.
Bye.
There you go.